Norman Calder had never cared much about birthdays, but turning 50 felt different. Not because of age, he wasn't sentimental, but because this time his family acted strange. His wife Willow moved around the house with an odd, distracted nervousness, whispering to their daughter Harper and their son Tristan whenever he entered the room. They'd look up, smile quickly, and pretend nothing was happening. He dismissed the tension at first, assuming they were planning something sweet. A dinner, a surprise, a small family celebration. He never needed much. Even Willow's father, Otis Hardwick, called him twice that week, asking casually, "Your birthday is this Saturday, right? You home all day?" Strange, yes, but Norman allowed himself to hope. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of anticipation. But everything collapsed in a single phone call. His work phone buzzed early in the morning. The engineering firm he managed reported a sudden equipment failure on a major site. Safety risk, possible shutdown. He couldn't ignore it. He kissed Willow on the cheek. She barely reacted and hurried out. The emergency took hours, shutting down machinery, assessing damage, running crisis protocols. By the time Norman finally drove home, exhausted but relieved, he imagined maybe Willow and the kids were waiting with candles already lit. Instead, the house greeted him with silence. Cold, empty, echoing silence. No decorations, no lights, no handwritten note, nothing. He walked from room to room, confusion turning to unease. The living room was spotless, the kitchen untouched, Harper's shoes missing from the hallway, Tristan's backpack gone. They weren't home, not even pretending to be. Norman frowned, pulled out his phone, and opened Instagram. And his heart dropped. A photo of Willow, Harper, and Tristan appeared at the top of his feed, all smiling, wearing beach clothes, sunglasses gleaming in the sun. Palm trees behind them. Caption, family retreat mode on. Posted 2 days ago. Norman stared at the date. 2 days. They had planned this long before his birthday. Long before his emergency. They left him. Voluntarily. Happily. Publicly. Like he didn't exist. His chest tightened. Betrayal, humiliation, disbelief. They poured into him at once like cold water. He scrolled through the comments. Looks amazing. So deserved, Willow. Family time is the best time. Not a single mention of him. Not a hint that he was part of that family. He took a slow breath, forcing himself to stay calm. He checked the bank account. Transaction logs loaded, and one entry stabbed him like a knife. For $1,000 withdrawn 3 days earlier. By Willow. Norman opened the cabinet where they kept documents and found something else. A credit card he had never seen. Willow's name. Secret. The balance. $113 in debt. Not huge, but symbolic. A thread he had never noticed until now. He sat at the dining table and began gathering everything. Screenshots of their Instagram posts. Call logs proving he hadn't heard from them. Bank statements. Transactions. Piece by piece, his humiliation took shape. For 2 full days, he received nothing from them, not even a text. Yet he refused to reach out. He worked, he cooked, he slept, and he waited. On the 3rd day, at last, Harper messaged him. A single line. How are you? No happy birthday. No apology for leaving. Nothing that suggested she even remembered him. Norman didn't reply. Instead, he bought himself a cake, small, simple, lit 1 candle, snapped a photo, and posted it on Instagram with a caption. Here's to 50. Within minutes, Willow and the kids saw it. He could tell by how quickly their messages began flooding in. He ignored them all. That night, around midnight, the driveway filled with headlights. Doors slammed. Voices approached. Norman sat still in the dark as Willow knocked on the door again and again. Norman, please open. We need to talk. He didn't move. After nearly 20 minutes, the knocking stopped. The next morning, the doorbell rang again, this time louder, angrier. He opened it. Willow stood there pale, anxious, wearing the same sundress from her Instagram photo. Tristan hovered behind her, tense. Harper clutched her phone like a lifeline. Norman, Willow started softly, we need to expel. He didn't let her finish. He held up his phone and showed her the post, Tristan's story. A boomerang clip of them laughing by the hotel pool, captioned, finally free for the weekend. Willow froze. Tristan looked down, face reddening. Harper's eyes filled instantly with tears. Behind them, Otis stepped forward. "Now listen, Norman. Get out of my house," Norman said, voice like ice. Otis raised his hands defiantly. "I'm trying to." "Out." Otis hesitated, then stepped back, muttering. Willow wrung her fingers. "Norman, it wasn't like that. We needed time. You're always so." He cut her off again. Inside the dining room lay a thick folder, printouts, screenshots, statements. Norman picked it up and laid it open on the table as Willow and the kids entered reluctantly. One by one, he showed them each piece. The withdrawal, the secret credit card, the dates of their booking, the Instagram posts, the lack of messages, his empty home on his birthday. Willow's face drained of all color. Tristan stepped back, ashamed. Harper's voice trembled as she whispered, "Dad, it wasn't supposed to be like that. I swear." But Norman said nothing. His silence felt heavier than yelling. When Willow reached the last page, she lifted her eyes to him and said nothing at all. Her silence was louder than guilt. Norman kept his gaze locked on Willow, waiting for even a hint of remorse. But she only stared at the documents, lips pressed tightly together, eyes darting as if searching for an excuse that didn't exist. "You used a secret credit card," he finally said, voice calm in a way that was more terrifying than shouting. "You withdrew $4,000. And you lied about where you were going." Willow swallowed hard. It wasn't secret. Just what?" Norman snapped. "Lunches with your sister? Spa days? Or maybe a nice hotel somewhere?" Tristan shifted uncomfortably. Harper wiped her eyes. Norman's chest tightened. He loved those kids more than his own breath. Or at least he thought he did. "Dad," Harper whispered, "we didn't mean to forget your birthday." Mom said, "Enough." Norman raised a hand. "I don't need excuses." The tension in the room coiled like wire. Finally, Tristan gently touched Harper's shoulder. "Let's go upstairs. Give him space." They left, leaving Willow alone with Norman, caught somewhere between rage and shame. But Norman wasn't finished. He walked to the bedroom, where Willow's suitcase lay half-packed from the trip. The zipper was open, clothes poked out. Something fell off, an instinct, a sensation he couldn't explain. He pulled the suitcase closer and opened it fully. Inside, beneath Willow's folded shirt, were items that did not belong to him. A pair of men's boxers, a plain gray t-shirt, a leather belt with initials GR. He picked up the shirt and held it to his face. The cologne hit instantly, strong, woody, expensive. Not his. He turned back toward Willow, fury igniting in his chest. "Whose are these?" Willow stepped back, as if he had physically hit her with the question. "Norman, don't jump to conclusions." "Conclusions?" He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "There's a man's underwear in your suitcase." "That's Tristan's shirt," she blurted. Tristan poked his head from the hallway. "No, it's not." The lie collapsed right there. Norman threw the shirt at Willow's feet. "Try again." Harper rushed back, tears streaming. "Dad, please stop. You're scaring us." "I'm scaring you?" Norman's voice cracked under the pressure he'd been holding back for days. "Your mother has been lying for years, and I'm the problem?" Harper sobbed harder. Tristan looked helpless. Willow's hands shook. That was the moment the last thread snapped. Norman grabbed the suitcase, marched to the window, and hurled it onto the lawn. Clothes spilled everywhere, the strange man's belongings scattering across the grass like confetti of betrayal. Willow screamed, "Are you insane?" "Maybe," he shouted. "Maybe betrayal does that to a man." Tristan and Harper turned toward the front door, ready to flee. Willow followed them, shouting through tears, "We're leaving. We're going to my parents until you calm down." "Go!" Norman yelled back. "And don't come crawling back." The door slammed. The silence that followed was suffocating. For hours, Norman sat in the living room, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of the last 20 years. The vacations, the arguments, the nights Willow came home late, the sudden smiles she couldn't explain. Everything felt poisoned. Finally, something inside him hardened. He picked up his phone and called a private investigator he had hired once for a corporate case, Mark Marsden. "Mark, it's Norman Calder," he said. I need you to find out if my wife is cheating on me. And I need the truth fast. Marsden didn't waste words. Send me her photo and any addresses she visits regularly. I'll take it from there. The next 2 days were a blur. Norman functioned on autopilot. Work, eat, stare at walls. His mind churned, a storm of questions without answers. On the third evening, Marsden called. I have something, the detective said. You should come to my office. Norman arrived 30 minutes later. Marsden laid a folder on the table and opened it. Photographs spilled out, dozens of them. Willow at a hotel entrance. Willow in the lobby. Willow at a cafe. Willow in a car. And in nearly every photo, standing close beside her, a man, tall, sharp-featured, with sandy hair and a confident grin. Gavin Rivers. Norman felt his stomach drop. I know him, Norman whispered. That's her boyfriend from high school. Marsden nodded. According to the hotel concierge, they've been meeting for about 5 years. Always together. Sometimes she brings her kids or relatives, so the staff thinks she's a widow or separated. Norman's hands trembled. She told them she was a widow. Yes, Marsden confirmed. They assumed you were dead. A cold, eerie calm settled over Norman. Dead. His wife had written him out of her life so thoroughly she pretended he didn't exist. He stared at the photos again, each one slicing him deeper. 5 years. 5 years of lies. 5 years of playing family while sneaking away to another man. Norman stood slowly, his voice low and steady. Thank you, Mark. This is everything I needed. He walked out of the office into the cool night air, feeling like a ghost. By the time he got home, his decision was already made. He wanted out. For good. The next morning, he contacted a divorce attorney, Daniel Treadway. They met in a quiet downtown office, blinds drawn. I want a divorce, Norman said. Immediate. And I want to freeze every asset we share before she touches another cent. Treadway nodded. I'll file the preliminary paperwork today. We can request an emergency hearing. As for the kids, legally they're adults. You're not obligated to support them if you don't choose to. Norman exhaled long and slow. Then I'm done supporting them. That night, he ignored every call from Willow, Harper, and Tristan. His phone lit up dozens of times. He didn't answer once. On the 5th day, the doorbell rang. Hard, insistent. He opened the door. Willow, Harper, and Tristan stood on the porch, angry, hurt, demanding answers. You can't ignore your family, Willow shouted. You cancel Harper's enrollment. You have no right. Family, Norman asked quietly. Are you sure you want to use that word with me? Willow's eyes flashed with anger. But underneath it, Norman saw something else. Fear. Not fear of him, but fear of losing control of the story she'd built. You're blowing everything out of proportion, she snapped. Yes, I made mistakes, but you've been impossible for years. Controlling. Cold. Always working. I felt alone. Harper stepped forward, wiping her cheeks. Dad, Mom just wanted to feel wanted. You've been so distant. She didn't mean to hurt you. Tristan crossed his arms. You act like the victim, but sometimes you forget we're human too. Norman stared at them, at the 3 people who had shared his home, his table, his life, and felt a strange hollowness spread through him. That's your excuse? He asked quietly. You leave on my birthday. You lie. You hide money. You cheat for 5 years. And somehow this is my fault. Willow looked away. Harper's lips trembled. Tristan's jaw tightened. And then Harper asked the question that detonated everything. Dad, are you sure you're even my father? The world fell silent. Willow went rigid. Tristan's eyes widened. Harper instantly regretted the words. Norman saw it in her face, but it was too late. A cold, metallic ringing filled Norman's ears. Something inside him cracked cleanly, like a fault line splitting. Get out, he whispered. Dad, out. His arms swung out in fury and knocked a glass vase from the table. It shattered, the sound slicing the tension like a blade. Harper screamed. Tristan pulled her back. Willow dragged them both toward the door, shouting, We're leaving. We're done talking like this. When the door slammed again, the silence that followed didn't feel empty this time. It felt final. Norman stood there, breathing hard, heart pounding, until a dark, bitter thought rose inside him. What if Harper was right? What if she wasn't his? He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he gathered everything he needed for a DNA test: toothbrushes, hair samples, anything that would give answers. He mailed the kit the next morning. 3 days later, the results arrived. His hand shook as he opened the envelope. Thomas Calder, probability of paternity, 99.9%. His son, his boy. He exhaled, tears stinging unexpectedly. Then he read the second line. Harper Calder, probability of paternity, 0%. 0. Not low, not unlikely. 0. Norman stared at the word until it blurred. A wave of nausea crashed over him. His knees nearly buckled. Everything he'd felt for Harper, every bedtime story, every soccer game, every late-night conversation, suddenly felt like borrowed love. She wasn't his. She had never been his. He dropped into a chair, the paper trembling in his hand, and let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a scream. Something raw, animalistic, wounded. Hours passed in a daze. The rooms around him felt unfamiliar. The walls felt cold. Even the air seemed different. He no longer recognized his life. Then he heard the crunch of gravel outside. A car stopping, doors slamming, raised voices. Before he could react, the front door burst open. Otis stormed inside, followed by Willow, Tristan, and Harper. Otis jabbed a finger at him. Norman, enough of this madness. You terrified those kids. What is wrong with? Shut up, Norman said, voice dead and cold. Willow marched into the living room as if she owned it, scanning the area with disapproval. Harper stood behind her, crying but silent. Tristan looked exhausted, caught between loyalty and fear. Otis moved closer. You owe them an explanation for your behavior. Norman slowly lifted the DNA report. Here's your explanation. Willow's expression shifted from anger to dread. What is that? She whispered. Tristan looked between them. Dad? Norman handed the first page to Tristan. The page proving Tristan was his biological son. Tristan's shoulders sagged with relief. Then Norman handed the second page to Harper. Her hands trembled as she read it. She froze. Her pupils shook. Her breath hitched. Mom, she whispered, is this true? Willow pressed her fingers to her lips, staring at the floor. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to lie. She just stood there, waiting for the impact. Otis snorted. Well, guess now you know. Norman's rage erupted. He lunged forward, grabbed Otis by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. You knew, Norman roared. You knew she was cheating. You knew Harper wasn't mine. Otis shoved him off. Maybe if you weren't such a cold bastard. Norman reached into the drawer, pulled out the handgun he kept for emergencies, and fired a single shot into the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Harper screamed. Tristan dragged her toward the door. Willow shouted his name in terror. Norman lowered the gun, chest heaving, eyes burning with a decade of betrayal. Get out, he whispered. All of you. They didn't argue this time. They ran. Door slamming. Footsteps fading. Car engine roaring away. Norman dropped the gun onto the table and sank into a chair, trembling violently. His house felt cavernous. Silent. Dead. In the following days, the legal storm hit. Willow filed for divorce, accusing him of emotional volatility. Norman counterfiled for marital fraud, asset concealment, and 5 years of infidelity, backed by Marsden's evidence. Harper and Tristan were subpoenaed, but both refused to testify against him. Even Harper, still processing the truth of her own life, couldn't bring herself to hurt the man who had raised her. The divorce finalized swiftly. Norman cut off financial support for Willow and for Harper, though he continued helping Tristan quietly. Willow tried to pursue alimony, but the judge reviewed the evidence and denied her claim entirely. She walked out of the courtroom defeated, aging 10 years in a day. Norman returned to his house, now impossibly quiet, and stood in the doorway, taking in the emptiness. No laughter, no bickering, no footsteps, just silence. The silence of a man who had lost everything except the brutal truth. He sat down at the kitchen table, the place where the unraveling had started, and whispered to no one. Sometimes a man only finds himself when there's nothing left to lose.